is for closed communion, and the world is not.
Well, here, when you tell somebody no, it's like a rejection. They
Okay,
can't handle it.
So we're gonna get to that in a couple minutes tonight. That very thing. So just hang with me. So then, verse 20. Remember this word I said to you. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. And so as we follow Christ, the world is going to hate us because of its sinfulness, its unbelief, and because we make the world look bad. You would think the good things of mercy, the world would appreciate, but they don't, because it's connected with Christ and its holiness. You see, he goes on, if they kept my word, they will also keep yours. But all these things they will do to you on account of my name, because they do not know him who sent me. Who sent Jesus?
God.
His Father.
Yeah.
Remember, the Father sent the Son. You see, Jesus is an apostle of our Heavenly Father. He sent. The word sent in the Greek is apostle. Okay? So the disciples, Jesus, when he sends them, they are apostles. And then Paul mentions that they're ambassadors. An ambassador, someone who's sent on behalf of someone else. So then verse 23, whoever hates me hates my Father also. If I had not done among them the works that no one else did, they would not be guilty of sin. But now they have seen and hated both me and my Father. You see, Jesus was a goody two-shoes. So he makes sinners look bad. So, you see, then verse 25, but the word that is written in their law must be fulfilled. They hated me without cause. So then, this is, why do they pick on the nice kids at school?
Mm-hmm.
Why do they pick on, when Mike Pence was vice president, he says, I won't go to a dinner with a unmarried woman I'm not married to alone. They mocked and condemned him like he was some kind of evil person.
Only because they couldn't compromise.
But this because he's saying we must live a holy life. And they, don't give us that malarkey. Because, you see, they hated me without cause. But when the Helper comes, whom I'll send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth that proceeds, and he will bear witness about me, and you will bear witness because you've been with me from the beginning. In other words, in greater or lesser terms, we're going to say, I'm with Jesus. And then they're going to say, you blankety blank, because you're with Jesus. In the early church, the Christians were called upon to deny Jesus and to call upon Caesar as God. And there were some Christians who actually received a paper saying that they honored Caesar as God. And so the Christian church had this difficulty. What do? You see, some of the Christians were trying to play nice with the Democrats. And so they went along and so then the Christian church sees these people with this piece of paper, and they know they're around, and there's a piece of paper. And so the Christian church had a great difficulty in trying to to deal with this. So you see people compromising their faith, and that this was a problem. Chapter 16, we're going to just go here and then you see, I have said all these things to you to keep you from falling away. So to be loved by the world then is a temptation to be loved by the world instead of loving Christ. So he's telling them these things. See, they will put you out of the synagogues. Indeed, the hour is coming when whoever kills you will think he's offering service to God. Paul actually killed people. He had people put to death because they were Christian. It's not that he was going to do it, it was that he had done it. Okay? So here, this is how personal it is. All right, now there's Jesus talking. Let's go to the first letter of John. And
Regular John?
this is the first letter around page 2174.
The regular John?
No, this is unleaded John. Sugar-free, zero sugar.
Did you say it was 21?
Around 2173 or 74.
So that's not the regular John.
That's the other.
No, this is
First
this is
John?
yeah. It's a letter.
172.
You said 172?
No, no.
2174.
Oh, 74.
Okay, we're going to bounce around here in a little bit, but so
No, here's 4.
No, 2174 page.
Oh. Oh.
There she goes again. Can't hear her. What's going on?
well,
Yeah, it was at that funeral. And, that church reminded me of our church.
yeah,
I mean, they had a lot of the same things. I
Yeah.
mean, the pews, the heater things. What I really admired was the stained glass windows.
yeah, oh yeah,
I mean,
Oh,
we
yeah.
have those at the altar, but they had them all.
oh yes, and
They had the crucifix,
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
and some of those things, even the fans and the dark ceiling. I mean, I was like
So-
amazed. And it
Because they some of those things are similar because they think of it as a place where God meets man, and the stained glass, of course, is goes way back into the early days of Christianity. So that those were standard
like
things.
most churches had them.
Yeah, and you see, like a church like this, when they put the stained glass in the late 60s up at the front, there probably was discussion to do all the windows. There may have been discussion to do all the windows, but then it wasn't followed through on. The church down in Alabama I was at, they did all the windows. They started at the front, and then they had and people donated money to do stained glass all around. The church I grew up in, same thing. When I was young, there was nothing on, no Christ hanging on the cross. But when I got a little bit older, they got a crucified Christ on the cross. And then they started with the stained glass windows, and they, like 6 or 8 all the windows along the sides were all became stained glass.
And I noticed they were donated by people,
Oh yeah,
congregation,
Oh,
like
yeah.
families, I guess.
oh yeah. So we're going to take a few minutes here. We're starting here at verse 15. Do not love the world or the things of the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and the pride and possessions is not from the Father, but is from the world. And here he's mentioning all the sinfulness, all the things that come from our sinfulness. And there are other places where there's more complete lists. So the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, and the pride and possessions. So verse 17, the world is passing away along with its desires, but whoever does the will of God abides forever. So there is direction. Do not love the world, the things of the world, because the things that the world loves has to do with the sinful desires.
Well, yeah, it's like the hotsy-totsy girls dancing on stage, and
Well, every city has them.
yeah, and they're full
Okay.
of people watching.
Yeah.
I thought this, I read down past that, I just want to touch on it, because I never really heard this before. It says, let's see, where in the world did it go? Oh, about the Antichrist. Children, it is the last hour, and as you have heard that Antichrist is coming, so now many Antichrists have come. And what in the world is that? So then there's going to be Antichrist all along?
There were
See,
There were in our people against Christ. A popular religious figure in America is, even though they speak of Christ, they are against Christ. They come out appearing to uphold Christ, and yet they oppose him by their teachings.
Muslims? The
The
Muslims?
Muslims
Well,
don't actually
people-
about Christ.
Well,
Oh,
the Muslims acknowledge Jesus as a prophet, but do not accept his teachings. So they reject, and they certainly don't accept him as God. But a religion, many that would portray themselves as Christian are against Christ. And we will see if we get a chance, we're going to get into some of that tonight. So let's go back. Let's go back to verse 7 on page 2173. And so verse 7, Beloved, I'm writing you no new commandment, but an old commandment that you had from the beginning, namely the 10 Commandments. The old commandment is a word that you have heard. At the same time, it is a new commandment that I am writing to you, which is true in him and in you, because the darkness is passing away and the true light is already shining. That's a good way of saying we've been saved, we believe in Jesus, the light of Jesus is within us, but we still sin. The dark part is we're not talking about the dark meat on chicken. We're talking about the dark things of sin. Out of the heart flows every kind of sinfulness, and everyone has to deal with this. So verse 9, whoever says he is in the light and hates his brother is still in darkness. Whoever loves his brother abides in the light, and in him there is no cause for stumbling. So verse 11, but whoever hates his brother is in darkness and walks in darkness and does not know where he's going, because the darkness has blinded his eyes.
Well, it makes sense. When you're in the dark, you don't know where you're going.
Yes. Yes. So, when we are in the light, that means that we have the light within us. And then that light is connected with Christ and the Holy Spirit and the love of God.
Okay.
So,
About hating the brother. Okay, we don't try not to hate the brother, but if the brother is doing something so bad, the brother needs stopped, so the brother doesn't do more harm. Now, so there's a point where the brother, sister, whatever you want to call it, needs to be stopped in some way. And you know where I'm going with this. Sometimes it needs to be stopped permanently. So how do you? I mean, so the brother doesn't harm other people.
yeah.
Or you know what I'm saying? That sometimes the brother needs stopped, and that stopping might take that brother's life. So yeah. You don't want to let the brother keep on sinning. If he's going to keep on sinning, the brother needs to be stopped from sinning.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever
Hey,
sin
what you
that might
get?
be.
We sin every day.
Oh, really? What happens if it's called rape or murder? Are we supposed to just say, okay, oh, we all sin? Oh,
Well,
big
there's
difference.
laws for that.
Oh, really?
So,
Oh, well, you know.
so we're just talking about hating and loving and how we are to relate to our brother. And there is this
It's complicated.
yeah. And at the same time, taking a life is is in God's realm of things, not ours. So there's always a chance of repentance, but at the same time, those who persist in their sins are going to an eternal judgment. God will give them global warming.
Oh, boy.
Their globe will be warming and warming and warming. It is God who does that, not us.
Well, then we should never, as Lutherans, right, never participate in any war. If we're gonna get into that, then if we're gonna take it strictly, then we should never carry guns, never belong in any war, never be a police officer. So it's like I said, it's
No,
complicated.
the self-defense is a different thing.
Well,
That's someone is trying to murder you, then even in a world that hates sin, generally you're allowed to defend yourself. Even the recent gun case with Rittenauer, as much as everybody wanted to make him a murderer, he was doing that in self-defense.
see, taken strictly, what you're saying, we shouldn't be doing that.
No, because if a government calls armies to war, then a government has a right to defend the country. So then you get into we get into this discussion of a just war.
Bingo,
So, so you have these things. Now, currently, the Missouri Synod is supportive of the armies of the United States. We have chaplains. We have Missouri Synod chaplains who serve in the armed forces. So we are not against government armies defending the country and fighting wars because of the country, but even in time of war, if someone who is a soldier commits murder in the midst of war, he could be accused of murder, even if he's seemingly carrying out war against someone who's in his neighborhood.
And is it the same as render under Caesar what is Caesar's?
That's money. That's
Oh,
money.
that only applies to money?
So this um, um,
Yeah, I would look at it as the government.
yes, and you um, David had his armies. Uh, uh, he went to war. People went to war against him.
But that was because the cockroaches wanted to destroy the
Well,
Israelites.
yeah,
As far as
and
I know now, trust me, okay, we'll just bring up Vietnam. That was shenanigans went on there. Now, trust me, I love to stop the communists, but there was shenanigans big time there. Just Vietnam. Not talking about any other.
I know,
just
I know.
Vietnam itself.
and
I could have been there. Real easy. So it's things like
no,
that.
you see,
It's hard
is
to understand.
well, then there is a court in Europe that prosecutes war crimes. So the question, you're begging the question whether war crimes were committed in Vietnam. Now, on the one hand, the Americans were supporting the South Vietnamese government per se. So, but to discuss the Vietnam as as an example of a just war, in hindsight, um, that would be a difficult argument.
Well,
So I know,
there was a lot of premise there that you're trying to stop the evil, which they were evil. There's no doubt about it. The communists were evil, but it's the way they went about it. They had to conjure crap up to do it. So that kind of made it a little fuzzy. And they sure as crap didn't end it right. They didn't do it right. So there was all this crap going on and never accomplished squat. So there's people that got maimed and killed and murdered on both sides for nothing.
yeah.
So I mean, there was no end, no clear cut objective to get to where we at least have a free South.
Yeah, so this whole it really is a discussion of politics and what American government was doing, particularly taking over that region from France. And so now we're looking at politics and what was the motivations and what was the reason they were doing all of these things.
As a Missouri Synod Lutheran back then, they went. I'm sure tons of our people went and died, and some came back, thank God, and some died or remained. So how do you do that?
It's a terrible question.
You want to serve your country.
When you start looking back at the history before America went in there, the more you look into it, the worse it gets. And we walked in, so I didn't come ready to discuss the Vietnam War.
No, but I just use it as an example of one thing that is, we say, well, love your neighbor, and we're doing that, and it's like, how do we as Missouri Synod Lutherans, wrap our brains around that and make decisions?
We're talking a couple different things. Love your neighbor every day. The government calls up an army to go to war, but then you're asked if they're put in an unjust war. Where does that put the person who's involved with it? So that's extremely. Consider that the Crusaders, in one of their crusades, destroyed the Christian capital of Constantinople.
Why'd they do that?
Well, good question. They were going to fight in the Middle East,
Yeah.
but on their way to the Middle East, they ransacked Constantinople.
What? I never heard that one. That's a new
Oh
one.
yes, and probably weakened Constantinople and the Byzantium kingdom, and so
Wait a minute, Byzantium. No,
That's-
that was my Bubba's. Let's say my Bubba's church. They weren't Roman Catholic.
well, you see the Greek Orthodox were also referred to as the Byzantium.
Right.
The Byzantium Christians, because Constantinople was also known as Byzantium, and so they're interchangeable there, because the Greek Orthodox, their bishop was and is in Constantinople. So the Western Roman Catholic soldiers came, and they just pillaged their fellow Christians and seriously hurt Christians in the Greek-speaking world, and probably contributed to the downfall of Turkey to the Muslims.
I like that one. See, and they wonder why they get the bad rap. Well, because they did some bad stuff.
So
The Catholic Church has been dirty for a long time.
so the question you allude to about communion, we are going to get into now specifically, because the very thing that you were suggesting was that when someone comes to our church and we don't give them communion, we are judging them.
And rejecting them.
Okay, so here, let's.
Here's what happened one Easter. My niece and her daughters
Yeah,
came,
Which we're Methodist.
and
Make sure it's clear.
and then Pastor Blaine said, they want to come up for the blessing,
yes,
and to come up like this, so
Yeah.
he would know. And they went up for the blessing. But I think they were deeply offended and never wanted to come back to this church again.
and I think this is,
They were denied communion.
okay. So we're going to look at this very thing, the root of this whole subject. Okay, so a
See,
Methodist.
This is a lot of people. That's not just them. It's basically all the people that have been rejected.
Oh yeah. So we're going to address that specifically. So the question is, someone who comes to our church has a different belief.
Mm.
Okay? So we're going to address that specifically right now.
Because the comment that you will hear over and over and over again, if you believe that Jesus died for you,
Yeah, okay.
you know that you should not be denied Holy Communion.
Who said that?
I hear it all the time.
Where are they getting it from?
Okay, so
That's
let's,
their belief.
so here's what, on this page here, I have a quote from,
That Jesus would not deny them.
okay,
Whoa,
listen, here, we're reading the first, look at the paper here.
Oh, okay.
It says Apollos accuracy, okay? This is from the book of Acts. I think it's book of Acts 22. But I printed it out for you. Verse 25, he had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and being fervent in the Spirit, he spoke and taught accurately the things concerning Jesus, though he knew only the baptism of John. Apollos had become a Christian, but he understood baptism from John the Baptist instead of Jesus. So he knew Jesus as the Messiah, but he did not know the teaching and the practice of baptism that Jesus had instructed the disciples to do. Okay? So, verse 26, he began to speak boldly in the synagogue. But when Priscilla and Aquila heard him, they took him aside, explained to him the way of God more accurately. So here's
Who's Apollos? Never
he
heard.
well, he's in the Bible.
Just like Melchizedek.
You see, Melchizedek. Yeah,
Yeah, you slaughtered that one.
Melchizedek. I know.
I have a hard time with them.
No, but these are important. This is a hugely important. So what was the problem with Apollos? He's a Christian. He's preaching accurately the teachings of Jesus. What's the problem?
Yeah, what is it?
He's got baptism wrong. What's wrong with his teaching on baptism?
Tell me.
See, I can't remember if George talked about Apollos. I know I've heard of Apollos, but I can't.
Yeah.
He might have. George might have talked about this. Same thing.
So what's the deal about Apollos?
He knew, baptism of John.
So what's the difference between the baptism of John and the baptism that Jesus gives?
Well, the dove came down and God spoke.
Okay, but there's a problem with Apollos because he's doing the baptism of John. What's the problem?
I don't know.
Okay, so the baptism of Apollos is wrong. The baptism of Apollos, what he was doing was wrong. And so the two Christians, they pull him aside. They pull Apollos aside and explain to him the way of God more accurately. Okay? So what was it?
Was Apollos Christian before Priscilla? So, yeah, he was Christian.
So he was Christian, but he had baptism wrong. Why does that matter?
Well, what was wrong? How was he thinking of baptism? What was wrong with his thought?
Okay, what's the difference? And so what's the difference between the baptism of John and the baptism that Jesus commanded his disciples to do?
Well, God spoke to Jesus. I don't know if he spoke to John.
When John baptizes Jesus, what does he say about the baptism that he does for Jesus?
I don't know.